All right, today we are diving into one of history's great what-ifs. We're talking about a single, absolutely brutal day in the desert that brought an entire kingdom to its knees. It's a story about a brilliant, deadly trap, a really, really bad decision, and a battle that, you could argue, was won before anyone even drew a sword. This, folks, is the story of the Battle of Hattin.
So that really brings us to the big question, right? How do you destroy an entire army before the fighting even starts? I mean, how do you take out a powerful, heavily armored force, not just with weapons, but with a strategy so clever, so precise, that the outcome is already decided? To figure that out, we got to look at who was on the board.
Okay, Section 1, a kingdom on edge. So to really get how a disaster of this scale was even possible, we need to take a look at the Crusader kingdom of Jerusalem in the late 12th century. And let me tell you, it was not the unified solid gold powerhouse you might be picturing. Not even close.
Think of it like this. The kingdom was this fragile, kind of rickety patchwork of competing interests. Power was all over the place. The nobles were split into these rival factions. You had the old, established families butting heads with ambitious newcomers fresh off the boat from Europe. The king, well, his authority was shaky at best, constantly being challenged. This wasn't some stable, unified front. No, this was a kingdom that was practically begging to collapse from the inside.
And this slide really tells you everything you need to know. It's a tale of two leaders. On one side, you've got King Guy of Lusignan. His claim to the throne? Kinda weak. His nobles? Totally divided. His own competence as a leader? Let's just say it was questionable. And on the other side, you've got Saladin, a true master strategist who had spent years forging the Muslim powers of Egypt and Syria into one single unified force. You see what's happening here? It's the perfect storm. Absolute division going up against total unity.
Now, you might be looking at this and thinking, okay, so Saladin just had a bigger army, right? But nope, that's not the story here. Look at the numbers. Saladin had a bit of an edge. Sure, maybe 25,000 troops to the Crusaders' 20,000, but on paper, this was a pretty even fight. The outcome wasn't decided by who had more soldiers. It was decided by who had the better brain.
And that brings us right to Saladin's masterstroke. See, he didn't just stumble into a fight or wait for an opportunity. Oh no, he engineered the perfect battle. He laid a trap so perfect, the Crusaders were all but forced to walk straight into it.
So every good trap needs bait, right? Saladin's bait was the city of Tiberias. He marches in and seizes this key Crusader city. Now this was a direct challenge, a totally calculated move. He just knew that King Guy would be under immense political pressure to march out and do something about it. He wasn't just attacking a city, he was putting his opponent's king in checkmate on a chessboard he designed himself.
And this is where you see the real genius of the plan. It's beautiful in a brutal way. Step 1, lure them out into the open using Tiberias. Got it? Step 2, get ahead of them and control every single water source on their path. Step 3, use the blistering July sun as your own personal weapon to cook them in their armor. And finally, step 4, just harass them. Send in your light cavalry over and over to wear them down. Make sure they get no rest. Every single step was designed to break the army physically and mentally before the real fight even started.
All right, so the trap is set. Now let's talk about the Crusaders' fatal march. This wasn't just a journey to a battlefield. It quickly turned into a desperate, agonizing crawl for survival.
So, despite some of his more experienced nobles screaming at him not to do it, King Guy makes the fateful call. He marches his entire army out of the safety of Acre, leaving behind plenty of water, plenty of supplies, and heads straight into the parched, unforgiving landscape of Galilee. He walked right into Saladin's trap.
Just try to picture this for a second. You've got thousands of men, decked out in heavy chainmail, marching under a relentless sun, and their water is running out, fast. And every time they even think about stopping to rest, Saladin's horsemen are there, striking and then vanishing, just sowing chaos and confusion. It wasn't long before their main enemy wasn't Saladin's army. It was heat, exhaustion, and a soul-crushing thirst.
So, after Saladin's forces had secured every single water source along that route, how many accessible wells or springs do you think the Crusaders managed to find on their march? The answer is a big, fat 0. None. They were completely cut off. This army wasn't marching to a battle anymore. They were marching to their death by thirst.
And that brings us to the endgame, the inevitable, catastrophic climax.
Because let's be honest, by the time the Crusaders even reached the battlefield, they were already a defeated army.
They made it to these two hills called the Horns of Hattin. And there, Saladin's forces just closed in, sealing the circle. The Crusaders were trapped. They were exhausted, dehydrated, demoralized, and completely surrounded by a fresh, well-supplied enemy. The trap was sprung, and the slaughter began.
The result was a catastrophe on, well, every level imaginable. The army was practically wiped out, either killed or captured. King Guy himself, along with most of his nobility, were taken prisoner. The entire military power of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, gone in a single afternoon. And to top all off, their most sacred, holy relic, a piece they believe was from the true cross, was lost in the chaos.
And you have to understand, this was so much more than just a military defeat. For the Crusaders, losing the true cross was a crushing spiritual blow. It was like a sign that God himself had abandoned their cause. It just shattered morale across the entire Christian world.
So the defeat at Hattin, it wasn't just an ending for the Crusader army. In a lot of ways, it was a new beginning. Its consequences would send ripples across the Middle East and Europe for decades.
And the collapse that followed was just shockingly fast. I mean, with its army completely gone, the kingdom was basically defenseless. In the weeks after Hattin, Saladin just swept through, capturing one fortress after another. And then, just 3 months later, he takes the ultimate prize, Jerusalem itself. The news hit Europe like a thunderclap, and it directly triggered the famous Third Crusade.
And that is what makes Hattin a true turning point in history. It's one of those moments that just fundamentally changes everything. It completely crippled the Crusader presence in the Holy Land and cemented Saladin as the undisputed power in the region.
So when you look back, the legacy of Hattin is crystal clear. It was this brutal, unforgettable lesson that smarts, strategy, and logistics can absolutely crush brute force. It exposed the fatal cracks and divisions inside the Crusader states, it shattered the myth of their invincibility, and it poured gasoline on the fire of the conflict between East and West for another generation.
Which kind of leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Was the disaster at Hattin purely a testament to Saladin's military genius, or were the Crusaders, with all their infighting and their fatal arrogance, simply their own worst enemy? You know, maybe a brilliant trap only works when your opponent is more than willing to walk right into it.